Hey guys, and welcome back to episode 2 of Directed by Steven Spielberg. Today we're moving forward to 1974 to Spielberg's second feature film, The Sugarland Express, starring Goldie Hawn. Like the previous film Duel, this was also my first time watching The Sugarland Express, and so I have a fresh take on the film as I give you my review and analysis. Let's dive in. The Sugarland Express is the story of ex-cons Lou Jean Poplin and her incarcerated husband Clovis, who she convinces to escape from prison to assist her in retrieving their child, who will soon be placed in the care of foster parents. The exposition from the get-go is really tight and expertly communicated. It wastes no time setting up the film whilst giving us a decent window into the personalities of our two main characters. Lou Jean is the wild one, Clovis is the worrying one, and they need to get back to their son. Simple and easy to follow. They hitch a ride with an elderly couple before being stopped by a patrolman named Maxwell Slide. Whilst pulled over, they take Slide's car and speed off, leading to a brief chase that ends with them crashing. The two felons overpower and kidnap Slide, holding him hostage as they resume their road trip, followed by a caravan of police cars which eventually grows to include news vans, private citizens, and helicopters. A familiar film technique is utilized here to capture this chase, namely the shots into the rearview mirror to create tension between the main characters and their followers. Although I don't think the technique is as effective in this film compared to the previous film Duel, mainly because most of the film, the main characters are not really trying to outrun the police, instead accepting them as being on their tail. This is where the story really begins, with Lou Jean and Clovis starting to develop a bond with their hostage, developing a mutual respect for one another. The chase leads them across the state of Texas, continually using their hostage as leverage for fuel, food, and other demands. The story is extremely clear-cut to this point, and the setup is in place fairly early for the rest of the film. This is some of the first signs of Spielberg's masterful abilities for pacing and efficiently using screen time, something his future films expertly exhibit. As Slide's care grows for his kidnappers, he consistently encourages them to give up and save themselves while they still can. They ignore his warnings and press on with their mission. Even Captain Harlan Tanner, who is leading the chase, wants to see them live by surrendering. They're attacked at one point by private citizens whilst parked in a car lot, only narrowly escaping. The Poplins and Slide then arrive at the home of the foster parents, where they're met by numerous officers, including Captain Tanner. Clovis is shot and revealed to be fatally wounded after the chase, which ends the film. The closing credits reveal Lou Jean is sent to prison for 15 months, but eventually gains custody of her son. Slide escapes unharmed. Ultimately, it's a bittersweet ending. To give you my overall thoughts on the film, I thought The Sugarland Express was a neat little flick that executed the story it was telling well enough. That said, I can't say I was particularly taken by the story in any way. The characters were fine, solid performances, but nothing to write home about. When it comes to films based on true stories, it's simply a matter of measuring how well they were able to keep me invested in what was happening, and I think the film did just enough along the way to do so. It's interesting to think that Spielberg's first two feature films were essentially road trips. I do think, however, that Duel was far superior at executing its goal of being a thriller than The Sugarland Express does of being a heist-type film. I found the characters to be mostly one note. Lou Jean is a brash, doesn't take no for an answer type of woman. Clovis is a timid, worrying type who does whatever Lou Jean tells him. And Slide is the innocent, inexperienced lawman always wanting to do the right thing. This is how they are each presented, and they don't really grow beyond these starting points. This stagnation made them less and less interesting as characters as the film went on. The first thing that came to mind when this film concluded was that there was little you could consider to be Spielbergian in its direction. Perhaps it's due to the fact that it's based on a true story, so he took less liberties visually. I mentioned earlier the use of the rearview mirror shots, but other than that, there is little that is specifically familiar to the Spielberg brand. The visual aspect of the film feels pretty generic for the most part. It's possible that if I had watched this film when it was released in '74, that I might have been more impressed, but it's hard to separate myself from my knowledge of Spielberg's distinct visual style that we know he develops in his future films. And in comparison, this film falls short, especially coming off the back of the directorial masterclass that was Duel. I think the issue with the film is that it is constructed as a character-driven film, but lacks characters who are particularly interesting. Lou Jean, Clovis, and Slide each have distinct personalities, but they don't really experience much growth throughout the course of the film. Apart from Slide forming a bond with them, there's no impact on the outcomes based on what they learn from one another. This may in fact be accurate to the true offense, and that's fine, it just doesn't make for an entirely satisfying story. Not that every story should have a happy ending, but rather should be satisfying in the sense that it felt like a worthwhile investment of time as a viewer. A couple things worth noting is that this film does have its share of humour, which gives it a more light-hearted feel, particularly compared to Duel. The levity definitely does help the film, that clearly sets out to not be an intense police chase. The other noteworthy fact is that this film marks the start of arguably one of the happiest marriages in filmmaking history, and that is the long-lasting collaboration of Steven Spielberg directing and John Williams composing. The music definitely has the textures of a typical John Williams score and clearly departs from the more Hitchcockian style music of Duel. It's far from his best work, but still worth noting that of all films, The Sugarland Express is ground zero for the dynamic duo of Spielberg and Williams. I think what could have given this film more weight was to have more conversations between the main trio about how much their son means to them. Doing this would have deepened Lou Jean and Clovis's characters and created greater stakes for their mission. Love is after all a great motivator, and hypothetically, just imagine how much more emotional the ending would have been if Slide gained a greater appreciation of their love of their son. Seeing Clovis dead would have been that much sadder. A few more conversations like this could have made a world of difference. So that's the second directed by Steven Spielberg in the bag. As you can tell from my review, I wasn't as high on this film as I was with Spielberg's first outing, Duel. That said, I definitely don't think it was a bad film by any means. I think it's simply a good film that tells the story it sets out to tell without being particularly captivating in the process. I give The Sugarland Express 6.5 out of 10 and thus ranking it second behind Duel on my current list of Spielberg films reviewed. So next up is the film that started the summer blockbuster phenomenon, and of course that is the 1975 classic Jaws. Can't wait to cover that one, but until then, thank you for watching and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.